Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to tonight's program of Government in Transition. I'm your host, Eddy Layne, and I'm joined this evening by two distinguished gentlemen as we're about to patch them in here to our live feed. Mr. Joe Hamilton, and I am also joined by Mr. Charles Ramson Jr. Joe, good evening and welcome to the program as we wait the arrival of Charles in the meantime.
Hi, Eddie. Good night again. And good night to viewers.
Yes, we're trying to get Charles to come in and join us in just a bit. He should be in here. But in the meantime, Joe, we continue to monitor. Charles, good evening and welcome in. I think Charles.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Good evening and welcome. I think. Okay, he's gonna be back in. But Joe, let's get right into this. I don't want to say drama, but the lies, misinformation, the flip-flopping, and everything else that you can think about continue with the desperate cabal. You know, at one, and I said this last night in one of the programs that after the elections on March 2nd, about March 3rd, maybe March 4th, the coalition was shouting, "We won." March 5th, they used the Mango fraudulent declaration and they claimed victory. Then they claimed victory again on March 16th. They maintained that before the recount started. When the recount started, and the real numbers were being exposed to show that the People's Progressive Party, Civic, won the elections. Then they began to claim the elections were fraudulent and all sorts of things. And they start with their quote-unquote irregularities, which they have not provided any evidence for. Then they changed from that. They went, when the Lowenfield made his fraudulent attempt at fraudulently present numbers, they claimed victory again. Then they claimed they lost. They're claiming victory again. Could you explain this? Could you explain this to the people of Guyana?
I think it is said that liars always have to make up lies when they're caught in a lie they told before. For us, we have been consistent from day one that we won these elections. We have not had to change our conversation regarding the March 2nd, 2020 elections. We have said since about the 4th of March that we won by over 15,000 votes. And up to this moment, that is consistent, and the recount proved that we were correct, that our statement of polls were accurate, and they were statements of poll made available to us, given to our agents via GCOM. So what they're doing, and I suspect, Eddie, based on what has happened in the last 24 hours, apparently there's a recognition that all the lies they're telling via the media and via social media is not catching on. So they have determined that they will go personally to the villages. And David Patterson, I'm told, went to Essequibo Coast today, and all the pictures suggest that the people rejected him and tell him go to hell because they did not turn out to listen to the lies. A set was to go to Region 3, and again the people did not turn out to listen to their lies. Amna Ali, she went to Region 5. Again, people didn't turn out. So she resorted to driving through the villages using a loud ailer and distributing pamphlets and flyers with the latest low and feel numbers, and show you see the desperation that has stepped in because there's a recognition that time is running out on them and no one is supporting them in their fraud and the lies that they are attempting to say to the Guyanese people. The Guyanese people are smart enough and they are aware, even the supporters of APNU AFC, that their party lost the election. And senior functionaries in the party, members who were in government, they have already conceded that they lost the election. So this new conversation based on Lowenfield last set of fiction will not work because the world is aware. All Guyana is aware, even those who are APNU supporters who fail to acknowledge it, that the People's Progressive Party Civic won the elections held on March 2nd, 2020.
Charles, I'm going to bring you in here. Welcome to the program, by the way. I see you had some challenges there earlier, but I'm bringing you in here. We were talking about this new campaign on those fraudulent and fictitious numbers that Lowenfield presented in his report to the commission, and the coalition now fanning out across the country, ringing bells and on loud hailers, lying to people about a victory. This is nothing short of a desperate group of people, a very small group, by the way, who are hell-bent on misleading the people of this country and more so misleading their supporters.
Yeah, actually, that's a good place to start, Eddy. So I want to just show the desperation to the Guyanese people and just the world at large. And I want to start off by saying that I and the People's Progressive Party, we condemn the attacks, especially the personal attacks on Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, along with Ralph Gonsalves and Owen Arthur and all of the prime ministers and individuals who have taken the time to just show that they're interested and care about Guyana. Those personal attacks endanger our relationships with other countries, and it's really an abomination to get to that level of desperation where they're going to endanger all of our relationship, not only with those countries, but the entire world. Because you've seen the attacks stretch to as far as the organizations, and those organizations are representing the entire world. Think about CARICOM, those are our brothers and sisters, our countries are brothers and sisters, 15 countries in CARICOM. You have the European Union, there are 27 countries in European Union. This is the largest bloc in the world. You have the Commonwealth, which is 54 countries, that's 2.4 billion people in there, the largest concentration of people in the world. You've got the Organization of American States, which includes all of the Americas, North, Central, and South America. They are also attacking them. They're attacking the ambassador for the United States. They're attacking the High Commissioner for Britain, the United Kingdom, the High Commissioner for Canada, the ambassador for the European Union, now Norway. And what they're doing, in effect, is damaging all of our relationships and all of our opportunities for trading and good relationships in the world. And they're doing something that even God didn't do. And they're trying to turn Guyana into an island of isolation, where in this connected world, we have to be able to rely on each other. So, but Granger himself can stop all of this immediately. And his silence is what encourages these attacks. And it encourages them to get even more desperate in their operation. And that's why you see them fanning out all across the country. But they're fanning out because they've tried to mobilize protesters to come at locations and at certain days. And it's not happened. Today, we saw the voice notes going around that people must come to CARICOM. They had one person there. The other day, they wanted to have a lot of people come to the court and to GCOM. They had about 20 persons there. In Linden, where 20,000 persons would have voted for the APNU AFC, they had about 12 persons who protested in Linden. So this attempt here to go across the country, you notice as well though, Eddy, is that they're not using their own vehicles. They're not putting their hands in their pockets and pay for that gas and pay for the individuals. They're relying on the state machinery and the state resources to have this campaign, because they realize that, as you said and as Joe said, they're coming to an end. Their life in government is coming to an end. Even though we're going to have to wring power from them, and we are going to do it, make no mistake, the People's Progressive Party and everyone here who is supporting democracy, not only in Guyana and all across the world, no one is going to allow this dictatorship to stand and destroy us as it did before. Because many times, a lot of times there's a criticism about 54 years of independence, leaving out a big chunk of that 28 consecutive years of dictatorship where we didn't have a democracy. And what was the result? We ended up as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. We cannot allow that to happen, and we will not allow that to happen.
Also, you have Eddy, Charles, and I'm sure you would have seen, you have Moses Nagamutu with his asininity trying to suggest that is what it is, some big geopolitical move of the United States. That is the reason why they are interfering, as he says, and supporting the People's Progressive Party Civic, because their intention, apparently he's saying, is to use Guyana as a launch pad to force Maduro government out of power. So they can't make up their minds. Now Nagamutu is saying that we are in this strange alliance with the US to force Maduro out of power. The dossier that Arman and Patterson signed on to, they said that we are allies of Venezuela and Iran, not Iran, Venezuela and China and Iran, yes, and we are anti-Americans and anti-West. So, I mean, apparently they don't have the same notes, because one time we are aligned with America and the rest to get rid of Maduro, if you follow Nagamutu. And the dossier that they sent up to US to lobby the US, they says that we are partners with China, Iran, and Venezuela, and we are anti-American and anti-West. And I note Nagamutu, again, in his foolishness, he says that the Americans should be careful because the People's Progressive Party Civic is a Marxist, Leninist, communist party. I mean, I haven't heard the word communism and I don't know when. But it is the same type of lies, but they can't keep their story straight. So he has now, put forward some grand geopolitical strategic plan that the United States, they have, and that's why they're supporting us. The fact is, all the governments and the organizations, they're supporting our position because our position, it is aligned with them. One, because they have the evidence that we won the March 2nd elections. And secondly, because the fight is for democracy against dictatorship. And that is the fundamental reason. why all the people are supporting the People's Progressive Party Civic in this struggle. The struggle is a struggle against people who want to establish a dictatorship, people who lost the elections and who want to hold on to power. And in the case of the CARICOM countries and the articulation of Owen Arthur and Mia Motley and the other, and Ralph Gonzalez, they take the position that if we allow one member state to have a party get away with stealing an election, this can become detrimental to all of us, because this can move from one CARICOM state to the next, where some government in another jurisdiction can feel that they should not leave power even though they lost government. So self-interest is integral to everything that the people who are supporting the movement in Guyana, because they don't want this to happen here. And the important issue, again, Mia Motley making the point about the charters signed by Guyana, and the Commonwealth Secretary General making the same point, that you signed on to charter that speaks to democracy, and charter that speaks to democratic governance, and charter that speaks to free and fair elections to elect government. So you couldn't turn your back on it at this hour. And they're attempting, they want to ensure that those documents, those charters, they're not brutalized and criminalized by Granger and his gang. So that's why they're supporting the People's Progressive Party civic position.
And if I could say, Joe, to add to what you said there, and maybe I can offer a bit of a different perspective with regards to the support. One has to recognize that the support that you're seeing from the international community is not support for the People's Progressive Party per se. This is support for democracy. So I want to make that point. The People's Progressive Party is on the right side of the law. The People's Progressive Party is leading the struggle to preserve and protect our democracy. So this is not the US, the UK, Canada, the Commonwealth, CARICOM deciding for some reason or the other because there is some sinister plot to unseat Granger when he has lost the seat already, or some sinister plot to install a PPPC government by any fraudulent or undemocratic means. This is a case where Granger and his gang trying to hijack the democracy in this country, trying to force their way onto the people to form a government. The world is standing on the side of democracy, the side that the PPP and all the new political parties are on. And that's the reality. So APNU would want to make this a PPP and the world versus APNU AFC. It is not. It is democracy and good versus dictators and evil. And that is what we have simply. Charles.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. But one of the things that I want to pick up on what Joe said a moment ago about what Nagamutu and his asininity is selling to the people out there, hoping that somebody buys it, is that the Organization of American States also speaks on behalf of Venezuela. Venezuela is a member of the Organization of Venezuela of American States. So when the Organization of American States says that they have an obligation to promote democracy and the rule of law and those types of values, it is because everyone has signed on to that. They cannot ignore what is happening. And if the APNU AFC think for one moment that all of these organizations will, and these countries, which we have some very powerful neighbors, just so that we're clear. And I don't mean neighbors to the left of us or to the right of us. I mean across just north of us, the United States of America. United States of America is the most powerful country in the world. If you think for 1 second that they're going to allow a rogue nation, which calls itself the gateway to South America, to go rogue and think that there are no attempts to prevent that from happening and make sure that it doesn't happen, then they've got another thing coming. The bottom line is that these bullies have to be stopped. Our country and the people of our country, the lives are now at stake, of future generations are at stake. And I can never forget some of the most vivid memories that I've had when I was growing up, when we would go by 2 weeks without electricity, where we would have to dig holes for water. This country has moved in leaps and bounds. I remember when there would be people who would die from cholera, Joe and Eddy. People would die from scurvy and rickets, things that we don't even hear about anymore because this country has advanced so much under extremely difficult circumstances, being bankrupt. Now they've bankrupted the country again, and now they're using their last days in office to rape the treasury, to bleed it dry. You've saw some of the huge scandals that have come out over the last few days, where huge tracts of land have been given out to their friends and their cronies and their financiers because they've overpromised and they promised that they were going to be able to succeed in rigging the election. And I want us to be clear about something, because I want to take us on to Lowenfield, Eddy, because we were on to what the APNU AFC were doing for a very long time. And in particular, what Lowenfield was doing for a very long time. And it's only now that people are getting to see the revelation of his actions and how bad and desperate he is and was for the APNU AFC to getting them back into power. We knew about that secret meeting at Brandsville. In fact, we had the recording. It was shared all over the internet. And we also knew that some of his own friends, when he had a party at Charles Series' birthday, and he went there and he had a drink, and they came and told us exactly what he said and exactly what his plans were. Some of the people who he believed that he could trust, because they don't believe in the rigging of elections, and they also wanted to get rid of Granger and his cabal. So we have information right now that's coming out of Congress Place. So when they believe that they're operating in this vacuum and they can continue their plans and just bully their way into power, it will never happen. The People's Progressive Party has been fighting for Guyana and for the rights of Guyanese and to preserve our democracy from the beginning of time, but definitely aggressively once again when APNU AFC came into power. You remember when they tried to install this in a unilaterally unconstitutional breach of the Constitution, Justice Patterson. And we had to fight that to get him removed. Had we not removed him, this election wouldn't have even happened in 2020. Let alone, leaving aside the free and fairness, the possibility of free and fairness, the election wouldn't have even happened in 2020. It would have taken 2 years before we completed the entire house-to-house registration scenario. So we've been fighting for this for a long time, and we're not running out of energy. And I want all of the Guyanese people to know that I know that at times it becomes frustrating. And I know that sometimes you become angry and fed up and tired because they're dragging out this process so long, and we're seeing all the revelations and the corruption that's happening in the process. But don't get tired. We're not getting tired. Don't get frustrated. We never said it was going to be quick. We're going to have to wring this power out of them, and we are going to do it.
Before you come in here, Joe, and I want us to go back a little to the whole issue of the desperation, this thirst for power. You know, by all means, from the APNU AFC, they are willing to ignore the will of the people. It's simple as that. They are saying to this nation, we don't care how you vote, how you voted in those elections. We don't care. We have to run this country. That is what they are saying essentially. Because as one former prime minister put it, it takes a very, very courageous mind. And I think Lowenfield is that courageous mind now. Who thinks that he can go openly, publicly, in front of the world and look at you and try to change numbers in favor of the coalition? So it's a clear case where they don't care about your votes. You know, they decided, look, we want power. So what they do, when the world recognizes that you have a bunch of thieves who are willing to thief an election, by all means, they stood up. And as leaders, organizations around the world stand up to them to say, it don't work like this. The will of the people must be respected. The people voted on March 2nd. Whether Granger and his gang like it or not, 15,416 persons more voted for the PPP. They have to live with that. They don't want to, but they have to live with that. The world is standing up to them to say democracy must prevail. What are they doing in response? They start the attacks. They start the attacks. So they first attack the diplomats. They first started with the diplomats at
oh yes, at Ashman's building.
Ashman's building. Then they moved from that. They went after former Prime Minister Bruce Golding. They went after former Prime Minister Owen Arthur. They went after the U.S. Secretary of State. They went after the Assistant Secretary of State. They went after the bipartisan Congress men. They went after Prime Minister Mia Mottley. They went after Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. They went after every single person. And I want to ask the supporters of this coalition, you know, is everybody else in the world wrong? And Granger, who is dishonest and has absolutely no integrity. He's indecent, no decency. He's the only person who's right. And don't fool yourselves. Everything that you're seeing playing out here, the intellectual author is David Granger. I believe so, and I'll tell you why I believe so. I believe so because every time Mr. Granger comes out and speaks, he has never condemned the actions of those wild men, as you would want to call them, in the coalition, the Joe Harmon, Lampi and Pompey. You had Valda Lawrence, he seems to have disappeared from the scene, Amna Ali and so on, making all sorts of statements. He has never condemned them. Matter of fact, the man came out and said, Lowenfield, he praised Lowenfield for rigging the elections. So Mr. Granger is the intellectual author of this. You want to tell me the world is wrong and Granger alone is right? They say whenever there are problems and you are the common denominator, take a step back and ask yourself why. You're always at the center of these things. You have to be the problem, you know? And that is what we're seeing.
Eddy, the thing is, Granger, after Lowenfield statistical fiction, Granger gave Lowenfield report a lot of credit.
That's the point I'm making.
You would note that the most important interlocutor report is yet to comment on the CARICOM scrutineer's report because that report does not speak to his fraud and the criminality of the conspirators on his behalf at GCOM. He is very silent. He has said nothing, and the report is out since last week, over a week now, and he has not said anything. But he was able when he invited his selective media to say that the chief executive officer report is fantastic. You know, at that time, Layne was giving him 2/3 majority in the National Assembly. You know, and now Layne has taken away seats from him and gave him just 33 seats. He has taken away. And the thing is so laughable that if really you had won these elections according to Layne permutation by 40 seats, and suddenly weeks after, another fiction, you have 33 seats, one would want to believe that if the seats really belongs to you, you would have been fighting for your 7 seats that you lost in the last couple of years. You know? But they're not fighting for that because they know that since this 3rd of March, they know that they lost the election and they know how many votes they lost the election by. Dominic Gaston had a test to that. He suggests that everybody had access to the statement of polls and they knew they lost. And he indicated that the fact that we were 52,000 votes ahead, and the fact that we won Region 4 sub-district East Bank by nearly 2,000, I'm quoting Gaskin, and the fact that we won Region 4 East Coast sub-district by over 10,000, he knew, he said, that they had to beat us by over 50,000 votes in Georgetown. And once that did not happen, he knew they lost the elections. And all the leaders, they have the same information, including his father-in-law, at their disposal. And you would note Granger suggested that he didn't have access to the statement of poll. He saw his winning the elections via a spreadsheet. I suspect that had to be Mingo's spreadsheet shared with him because Mingo, if you recall, and Valder Lawrence, they had the same spreadsheet at the time. So they have moved from, and Charles mentioned, I think Eddy also, they have moved from winning, they have moved from not winning or fraudulent elections, they have moved from that to let us annul the elections and do it over. So today, based on their finding out, so they again won the elections. So they can't make up their mind what they want. You want it or you want it to be annulled. Up to the last week, Friday, in the arguments put before the court by Basil Williams, according to Dawn Gregory, he went to the extreme of asking the Court of Appeal to issue orders annulling the elections. That is what he said. So he said annul the election last week. A week from then, they're now finding out to say we win the elections again for the 5th time. So they have to decide what they want. And all of that is fiction because they know they lost the elections since the 2nd of March that evening. And I agree with the point you raised that the architect of this is David Granger. And he outlined his project, and Charles touched on it, about installing partisan. That was part of the project. He outlined his project in 2017, addressing the PNC chapter in Atlanta, when he asked them the question that PNC, we have to ask ourselves how we got into government and how we stayed into government. They had already gotten into government via utilizing AFC in a coalition, and how the PNC stayed into government in the past by rigging elections, by controlling the elections machinery. But what he wasn't prepared for is that this is not 1970s and 80s. This is 2020. That is what he was unprepared for. And that is what has created the conditions whereby they have taken a road where they can't turn back. Oh, and I suppose the other important thing they throw into the wash also, I saw the last couple of weeks, they're very silent on that matter. The conversation about shared governance and of a government of national unity. I have not heard them speaking to that matter in the last couple of weeks. So every week, they change the story about these elections, what they want, whether they win or whether they lost or whether they want it to be annulled.
So that conversation of shared governance is for the period when they have lost the election. So whenever they are winning, you know, that's a conversation of convenience.
Yes, yes. So by any means, they must be in a government, either by themselves or a part of a government. The fact is, they want to stay in government because they're afraid of prison time, because they know the corruption they were involved in. And importantly, for the ordinary supporters, in this period of all the corruption that is happening, nothing is going to the ordinary people. Nothing is going to them. There isn't a corrupt scheme happening to make available hampers to their supporters and the people of Guyana. There isn't a corrupt scheme happening to make available cleaning supplies and masks to their supporters and the people of Guyana. All the corrupt schemes are in the interest of their big business friends and cronies and lackeys and families. So the ordinary people that Charles was speaking about that are coming out to protest in their little dozens, they are suffering and catching hell. And nothing they're doing is on these people's behalf. They're giving away large tracts of land. You have not heard simultaneously they're making available house lots for ordinary people. And so the people, their supporters must take note of that. We hope that they have the capacity to take note of that, that they're not beneficiaries in this process, like they have never been in the last 5 years.
I want to, Eddy, I want to
go straight ahead, Charles. Go straight ahead.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a couple of points there that Joe mentioned, because he mentioned about Granger's interview that he did with the Chronicle and his select persons in the media, where he said that he never saw the statements of Paul. I found that to be such a revelation, because at one point in time, there were some people who were saying that it is possible that David Granger doesn't know about the fraud and the thieving of the elections and the rigging and the plan to rig. After hearing all of what he heard at Ashman's building and the reports coming out from the Carter Center, from all of the international observers, the joint statements telling him not to swear in, that there were fraudulent results. 4 weeks went by, or maybe even more, maybe 6 weeks went by before the recount started. And then the recount started, you added another 33 days, and then he did the interview. So you're talking a period of a good 2 to 3 months going by with a man who would have heard so much about the fraudulent declarations coming out of Claremont Mingo. And you mean to tell me that he is so unconcerned about Mingo's fraud that he wouldn't even ask his party to see the statements of Paul? He is cheerfully unconcerned about the fraud emanating from Claremont Mingo's declaration, but at the same time, willing to speak about the unsubstantiated alleged fraud coming out to the APNU AFC. That says to me that you're dealing with a criminal mind here, a mind that is totally aware of the plan to rig the election. And we could take a step back. You remember when after we won that case to have Justice Patterson removed from the office of chairperson of GCOM. And after he had demitted office and he had backdated an order just before he left so that the house registration can start, all that as part of Lowenfield's plan when they had that secret meeting at Brandsville with Joseph Eastman and a number of these guys. So there was a period when we didn't have a chairperson of GCOM so that an election could be had or the plan to call an election. Do you know what this person, David Granger, was intending to do? And there was speculation that he would do. There was real discussion in the public within APNU AFC camp that he would do. He would submit a list of names to himself from which he would select a chairperson for himself. This is the reality of what we were facing back then to battle this entire rigging operation. And now, when he did the interview and he put pressure improperly on Claudette Singh to annul the election, and she didn't do it, now they've got to come up with a different plan. And the different plan is to use Lowenfield. But it's one of the most stupid plans that we've ever seen them hatch so far, because now they're trying to use Lowenfield as this key person who can present a report for which, as if it is only he can present a report that the Elections Commission has to accept. It is totally ridiculous. Let me explain why I say that, because it is important that everyone knows who the chief elections officer is. The chief elections officer is just an officer of GCOM. He can be fired tomorrow, just like any other officer of GCOM. So the moment that he does something that the commission doesn't, if he does something that the commission instructs him not to do, or doesn't do something that the commission instructs him to do, then he can be fired just like anyone else, and they can appoint a new person. And he is not the sole arbiter of what comes to the information, what comes to the Elections Commission for them to declare. It is only the commission itself, and he is not a member of the commission. Only the commission itself is responsible for the supervision of elections and the declaration of the results. So while APNU is now treating him as though he's a god because he's driving around in a big Land Cruiser, which was originally for Justice Patterson, and now the current chairperson doesn't even have this big new Land Cruiser. He's got a police outrider everywhere that he goes. He's got another outrider, which was his old Fortuna that he used to drive. He has these armed escorts and armed bodyguards, as though he's the most important person in the world, because they believe that he can deliver the election to them. And that's why they're running around the place sharing this election report from Lowenfield. But his report is going to be canceled and can be canceled by the commission. He has no power above the commission. The Constitution says that anybody connected to any function in the election, that they can be instructed to perform their duties. And just so that we're clear, because I know some of the people in the APNU AFC are listening to me too, I want you to know, go and read point 15 of the same order of the recount. The order itself says that just to avoid any doubt whatsoever, for the avoidance of doubt whatsoever, the chief elections officer and any other person performing functions for the recount, until this entire affair is over, they are subject to the supervision of GCOM, the Elections Commission. So in addition to the Constitution, you have the order, and then he writes this letter to the chairperson of GCOM. And I just want to identify, just to show the public the deceitful nature of Lowenfield. When we had an injunction, when you had Claremont Mingo's declaration, an injunction that stopped him from doing anything, any such declarations or anything like that, he hurriedly prepared this report, flouting the injunction that we had, stopping them from proceeding with that declaration. Then we saw recently when he was the chairperson of GCOM instructed him to prepare the report. He was served with a notice of motion, not an injunction. No order was granted stopping him from proceeding with the presentation of his report. He was served with just this notice of motion. He says he cannot proceed to present his report because he was served with this notice of motion. And then when the Court of Appeal stayed, meaning they put on pause the ruling that they made at the Court of Appeal, he still hurried to present this report, and then deliberately or unintentionally, whichever which one, because I can't say, but I have my own suspicions about what he did, misinterpreted what they said. Because Eddy and Joe, you would know that the order from the Court of Appeal said that it is ordered that the word valid votes, or the word valid is added to the three words more votes cast. So all they added was valid. He then wrote a letter to the chairperson of GCOM to say valid and credible. So he's now inserting words into what the Court of Appeal ruled. This entire affair is becoming so sordid and ugly. And it's only because you have this APNU AFC cabal, this rigging cabal that just refuses to relinquish power in a decent way. Imagine you've got Balthazar from Suriname relinquishing power, accepting that the opposition has won. And Balthazar was convicted for murder. He did that. He has gracefully come out of power, accepted the results. And Granger himself, who said that he was going to accept the declaration of GCOM, has now gone to court to stop the declaration from coming.
Charles, I want to take you guys to another issue, and this goes back to the desperation. We've been talking about the desperation of this cabal. So the Caribbean Court of Justice today held a case management conference where a number of issues were raised in terms of more or less bringing clarification, setting timelines, etc., etc. These people are so desperate to make a point that a proposal was put to Justice Saunders with regards to Lowenfield's actions, to somehow ensure that Lowenfield does not, while the matter is being heard by the court, do anything that will prejudice the outcome of the matter. So a proposal was put that maybe Justice Saunders, the CCJ, should seek to have Lowenfield withdraw his report. Justice Saunders, and I want to read what Justice Saunders said. Justice Saunders said, "We cannot undo what was done by the Chief Elections Officer. If counsel wished to include it in his submissions, whether what was done was lawfully done, or whether there is to be no consequence, or whether there is consequence to what was done, you're free to do so, but certainly did not intend in these proceedings to embark upon the substantive issues. That's a mouthful there from Justice Saunders. I want to show you what the Blow Brigade, as we call them, extracted from that. From all of that. This is what the Blow Brigade extracted. I'm happy the full comment of Justice Saunders is on the side. So, this desperate gang decide to extract put in bracket, the Caribbean Court of Justice cannot undo what was done by the Chief Elections Officer. To deliberately give the impression as though this statement by Justice Saunders was somehow an endorsement or bring some legitimacy to the statement, the report by Keith Lowenfield. Could you imagine how desperate this gang really is?
Eddy, and Charles, Eddy, you make the point about the man driving around with bodyguards and all that kind of thing. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, the wicked fleeth when no man pursueth. so all the people with the bodyguards and so, you know, you can put that around them. That the wicked fleeth when no man pursueth. Their deeds they're terrified about. And Charles, you raised an important point, where for whatever reason, people that don't understand the workings of GCOM, they're putting all this authority on Lowenfield. Like if Lowenfield is the alpha and omega. Lowenfield is just an officer of an organization, of an autonomous agency like any other officer. The fact is, Lowenfield don't make the declaration about any election results. You know, so this thing where we win, because of Lowenfield mathematics, these people don't even understand, and they don't take the time to understand. They're so caught up in their ignorance that Lowenfield does not, let me repeat that for viewers, because even I would say some of our supporters from time to time, they get depressed when they see shenanigans by Lowenfield. The point is, Lowenfield could be gotten rid of tomorrow and a new chief executive officer or elections officer is appointed. Lowenfield could be gotten rid of, and for that matter, private sector commission, they have called for suspension of Lowenfield. And what's her name? The other rigger could be instructed to prepare a report. And if she fails, they have ACEOs. So the point is, people can move upwards to do this work. And if all of them fail, GCOM can act, because the authority to declare the winner of the elections is not Lowenfield. It is the chairperson who does that on behalf of the commission. And so this mystique and this myth that APNU AFC tried to promote surrounding and revolving around Lowenfield, like if he would be responsible for who is sworn in or not. That is what it is. It's a fallacy. Lowenfield would not be responsible for the swearing of a president. It is not, and Charles, I'm sure you know more than I do, coming out of the chairman's declaration, it is not Lowenfield who would inform the chancellor or whoever got to perform the swearing in and the oath. Lowenfield would be long gone after he presents his report to say, based on the numbers coming out of the recount, and that is what the chairperson asked him for, to bring your final report based on the recount tabulation. After he extrapolate and put the seat allocation, Lowenfield is over with as regards a declaration and swearing in of a president. And he has to wait for another election, that is the local government election.
But Joe, don't you think the Global Brigade knows this?
Yes, I just want viewers to understand that. This taking up with Lowenfield, and you would note also, Lowenfield failed to grace the Caribbean Court of Justice with his presence. Neither him or counsel. And it must be that he's terrified to be there. Because you know the last time around, Charles, and you would know more than I do, he had the famous, what the man named, the man was so much a dodo that his name even can't come to me. Marcus is the name.
Marcus.
Lowenfield has dispensed with Marcus. And it looked like Lowenfield
the man who dog ate his submission.
Yes, Lowenfield has dispensed with our good friend Roysdale Ford, because Lowenfield did not grace the CCJ with his presence. So I just thought I pick up on the point Charles raised to clarify that this myth and mystique about Lowenfield is just a functionary in the Guyana Elections Commission.
He doesn't even
authority
have any...
at the Guyana Elections Commission is the chairman and the commissioners.
Yes, he doesn't even have any constitutional protection. And that is what I want to make sure. Look, when I heard what Lowenfield did, I laughed. Because at no point in time, first of all, did we not contemplate this. We knew this was coming a long time ago, right? Because a lot of information is being fed to us on a daily basis all over the place, from all over the place. So we knew this was coming. And at no point in time did I ever get any bit concerned, or any one of us became bit concerned. We just laughed at this because this is the most silly attempt at trying to disenfranchise a third of the voting population and attempt to swear in Granger, who incidentally has not only praised him before, but on the page of the APNU AFC, despite the ruling at the moment of the CCJ that says that everything must remain as the status quo, meaning no declaration should be made, no meeting held by GCOM, etc. They put on his page, on APNU's page, on Sandra Granger's page, on AFC page, swear in Granger now. This man that says he has so much respect for the courts, so much respect for the Constitution, and he wants to flout not only the Constitution, but also now the court order. Now, going back to Lowenfield, because I think that we got to be clear, and I don't want any of our viewers to labor under any misapprehension or worry that Lowenfield will determine this election. The rigors over at Congress Place, just make sure that you know that we know we can read the order just as you can. And I don't even need to speak to the Blow Brigade, Eddy, because the Blow Brigade are going to be blowing and dancing and partying regardless of what happens. Okay, regardless of what happens, they're going to be dancing and partying because that's what their sole motive and intention to do. Even when the other day when the recount was over, some of them were partying, even though the recount shows that we have the most votes. So there's some of them that their intention is just a party. But for the rigors inside of Congress Place and the APNU AFC, the order is what determines what Lowenfield should do. And the order gives him only a mechanical obligation, because the tabulation actually happens in the recount center. That's where it was tabulated and certified by the person designated to do so under the order. That is then sent in a matrix to Lowenfield. Lowenfield puts together that matrix and sends it over to the commission. When the chairperson of GCOM made the decision, because you saw they made this fervent attempt to tell the commission and to the rest of the world and Guyana and Guyanese people that they must annul this election. It came none other than President Granger himself, caretaker, interim, and hopefully no longer President Granger himself, that he wanted this election annulled. Then the day of, you saw the prime ministerial candidate, Kemraj Ramson, put it big in the newspapers. The election should be annulled. They go and tell all of their followers all over the place that the election should be annulled. So that was the one side of the argument. The other side of the argument was, should they present the report, should they instruct Lowenfield to present the report based on the recount tabulation results? And the chairperson of GCOM not only made the decision to say that that Lowenfield must present his report based on the tabulated results of the recount, but she also gave a written ruling, a written instruction to do so. So it's either he doesn't understand English language, or he's being deliberately manipulating his instruction, and he should be dealt with condignly. So at some point or the other, as soon as this case is finished, we're going to have to deal with this issue, and it's going to have to be dealt with seriously, because Lowenfield is operating in a way where he believes that he is untouchable. Nobody is untouchable in this entire affair, because it's the Constitution that guides our obligation, and he in particular, the laws of our country and the commission. So even when the CCJ has said, just so that we're clear, Eddy, because I know that you brought up that quote, even when the CCJ said that they can't do what's undone, they don't have to, because it wasn't a substantive matter that's raised. You would have seen Anel's response on that. The PPP has never asked for him to bring back the report, because it's improper. The order has already been made that there's for there to be no movement on declarations. But GCOM has that power to undo what he did. And it is very likely that GCOM will do that, because the order itself outlines how it is that we get to the report that he must submit.
Charles, Joe, I want to thank you guys very much for joining me this evening. I think this hour went by very, very fast.
Thanks, so many other issues. Having fun, Eddy.
Yeah, so many other issues we have to talk about. But and by the way, we're having fun with facts.
That's right.
Fun with facts. We are not telling people that Lowenfield declared the president and you know and that you know, all these fancy Nancy stories, as we call them. I think the coalition is very good at that. Many of them might be able to take up jobs as storytellers when they're done here. Unfortunately, they'll be telling a lot of lies because of the practice they're getting now. But you know, we had fun, but we are and continue to stick with the facts. And by the way, Kingston Negril is in Jamaica and not Barbados. Somebody need to tell Shara Duncan that for me. Gentlemen, have a good night. And to our viewers, we want to say a very, very good night to you as well. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Charles, good night.